Hey everybody, George here. Welcome back to the channel. We are now in the third phase of this build here, the three-part series that we talked about, and this will be the planting part of this series. Now, I'm running into a little bit of trouble here that was a little unexpected. Some of the plants that I received here are from a friend, and I just assumed that they were going to work really great. They will. It's just taking a little bit more than I thought it would to get these plants down in the soil here. The reason being is there's so many rocks in here, which is what I wanted. This was the design that I was going for, but there's so many rocks in here that they're at different angles, and so when you try to put these plants in and get their roots buried down in there pretty deep, and or enough to cover them to get them started, they'll root really well by themselves once you know, they've established themselves, but it's just the initial planting of these is becoming a little bit more difficult than I anticipated. So if you'll bear with me. So as you can see here, I've got a few of these in here already. I was sort of testing it before I went on camera here just to make sure. Now, anything you see on a plant that does not look healthy, get rid of it because it will grow back. In fact, anything that is not healthy is going to take away from the ability for that plant to thrive. So it's really important that you understand that clipping a few things off here and there are definitely not going to create any problems for the plant itself in the big picture. They're actually going to do better if you cut off anything that looks dead or not healthy and grow back twice as nicely and twice as strong as a plant that has dead leaves on it of any kind. So if you do see those on there, cut them off and make sure that you don't worry about that because it's not a problem. They're going to do just fine in the big picture, and that's just something that you need not worry about. So I'm going to be back in a few minutes here. We're going to talk about some more plants that we're doing, and I'm going to show you some different cuttings that we're going to be taking from other tanks. The two tanks that are right off to the side of this have some repens in there. I'm going to be using those in the very front here because they're low-growing plants, and you can keep them trimmed up and they look really nice. So like I said, this is not going to be a heavily planted tank, and that's going to propose some problems long term because of the idea that the more plants you have, the less algae growth and all that. But I do plenty of water changes, so that's going to offset that. As long as you're doing those water changes, you're really not going to have any problems with algae. And I mean, when you're setting up a tank like this, you're going to have to do 50% water changes a day. On a small tank like that, it's a big nothing. But you're going to have to do 50% water changes a day up to about a week, and then like every other day for another week, and then a couple of times a week until the plants have established themselves and the tank is fully cycled. So we're going to be back in just a second with some other plants that we're going to be putting in here, and we'll go from there. Hey everybody, George here, and welcome back to the channel. This is the part 3 series on this three-part series on this cobalt that we talked about here, and we're getting to the planting stage. Now, I did do a little bit of planting before I started videoing because I had a friend come over and bring me some really beautiful grasses that he thought would work in here real well. And he brought them over in a little baggie, so we didn't really get a chance to talk about them much. He doesn't even know the name of them, and I certainly don't. So what we've got here is a plant that I think, from what he says, he's used it in several different tanks, and they've really thrived in just about any kind of light. And they seem to do well. They're one of the more hardy plants out there, and that's cool with me because the more or the less work, I should say, that a plant is for me, the better. So Right now what I'm doing basically is I'm trying to clean this up a little bit and get it ready for some cuttings off these two plants to the left and right here of this tank here. I'm going to get some repens out of there that are sort of getting kind of tall, and I'm going to be planting those in the front here. And then we'll move on to some Anubias Nana, which is a good hardy plant that doesn't require a lot of light. This light right here will not be the light that I'm using full time in here, but it is a great light for being able to see what you're doing and to get a chance to plant the tank and really get an idea of what it looks like as far as where you should place the plants and that sort of thing. So that's why I'm using this particular light right now. Long term, don't know exactly what I'm going to use in here, but it will certainly be something that is lower light than what this is. This is very, very intense lighting on this particular unit here, and would be great for plants that needed a ton of light. You've got a full spectrum in here, very expensive light, full spectrum, giving you the whites, the blues, the greens, the reds, everything on the scale pretty much that you would need. And we don't need anything like that for what we're trying to do here. And like I said, we'll use it temporarily just for the planting and go from there. So right now I'm going to harvest some repens in here. I'm going to cut them off and plant them right away. And what we need for that, obviously, is a couple of different things. We need a pair of scissors, which is important to this, and a pair of tweezers, because we want them to be cut and then planted immediately so that there is no lag time. That makes the plants as healthy as they can possibly be. They will root. They will not have any problem getting a root system on them. It's just a matter of harvesting them and getting them in here. And I see a spot right here that is a little bit raised up, and I want to make sure that's not going to be an issue here. When you're planting, it's really all about, smaller plants in the front, higher plants in the back, obviously, so that you have that sense of depth. And of course, we want it to look like it's coming up out of the substrate in the back, and those plants that are the highest get to share that area, and then everything else is lower. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest a few of these in here that I think that I can use, and that really comes down to sort of getting some stuff out of the way. Okay, there's one. And like I said, these don't need much. They really don't need much. And I'm doing what they call, it's not a dry planting. It's just enough dampness in here to give these plants a good start, is really what we're looking for here. And then we're gonna, we just kind of tuck them in there and just kind of let them go, and do their thing. And we're going to do that with several of these, and probably from another tank as well. These will grow back very quickly. These were ones I was actually planning on cutting back anyway. A lot of floating plants in here. It makes it a little bit more difficult to harvest plants with floating plants, because you end up having them sticking to your hand as you're taking your hand up out of the soil. They end up sticking to you. So if you're having problems with these staying down underneath, you want to make sure you just kind of jiggle them up and down, and then straighten them out and move the soil around them, just so that they've got a good start. And again, keeping everything wet, so important. Keep everything wet. We're going to do a few more of these. I just got to figure out where I'm going to harvest them from, just so I don't make my tank look jacked up here. And There's another one. It has of course, a floater with it, a floating plant. We don't need that. So I am going to just strategically place these around so that they look good. So it gives the foreground of it. As you can see, I'm jerking this up and down. That gives the plant a chance to settle into the soil and root, get kind of stable in there. And then we just move soil around it to sort of keep it there, and spray it as much as we can, just to keep everything nice and wet, so we don't have that. And when you spray it too, you also are moving the soil around and packing it in a little bit more, and that's good too, obviously. So let's get a few more of these out of this particular tank, and then we'll start harvesting out of another tank as well, some more plants. So we want to obviously get a few of these, and not make the tank look horrible. We want to actually, this is a double here. This will look nicer because it'll make the tank look really that much more established. So we got to find a good spot for this one. This is a really nice cutting that is going to look really good really fast, and I'm going to tuck that right down in here, and within a few weeks that sucker is going to look really, really good. If you're having problems when you're pulling out your tweezers, just use your finger in there, and that does pretty much the same job as if you were to not if you didn't have anything that was going to hold that in there. Your fingers do a great job, is what I'm trying to say, of holding these plants in place while you get them planted. So we're going to do this right now and get a few more of these. There's going to be some floating plants in here, which is just no problem. I'm doing a water change in here as soon as I'm done anyway, so it's not an issue. We just want to get enough of these to where we, get a nice look here of an established plant, or not an established plant, an established aquarium that looks nice. And the way we do that is, like I said, we just put our fingers down in here. It's tight in here. This is one of the tightest situations I've been in doing an aquarium, and the reason why is because there are so many rocks in here, and that was the whole idea, was to have a lot of rocks in here that gave this thing a certain look to it, and I like it. I really do. But you got to keep things wet. Like I said, you got to keep spraying and keeping things wet. And in order to do that, you just have to, be cognizant of it when you're cutting your plants and you're putting them in here, that you're not letting them dry out to the point where, it's a problem. And like I said, all of these plants are going to come back. I trimmed these probably within the last couple of months, and they've come back tremendously, so I'm not worried about it at all. That's the one thing about plants: when you trim them, you are basically stimulating them to grow even more, so that's a good thing. Try to tuck some of them up against the rocks in the corners and stuff, because what that does is it makes it look like they're just kind of sneaking out from underneath the rocks. Here I am doing my Bob Ross impression again. But no, it does. It gives them an opportunity to really, and then, like I said, spray it and it'll pack that stuff around it. But it gives them an opportunity to look more established and that sort of thing. So we're going to grab a few more of these. I'm going to take a look here and see where, I think right here would be a good one here to grab. That's got some nice well-established leaves on it. And I think I'm going to start working my way back a little bit and getting in some spots here that are right in these areas here. If you can get them in there and get them to hold, as soon as you get the water in here, everything will start floating and doing its thing anyway. But there's a couple of pieces in here, you know, that you want to just get rid of because they're old pieces that are not going to do well. Like I said, if you see grasses that, or any plant that has a bad leaf on it, don't be afraid to cut it because it comes right back. In fact, they'll come back like gangbusters. It's really good to do that if you can. Trimming plants is something that people are afraid to do because, you know, they don't think that they're going to come back. But basically, like I said, you're really stimulating these plants to grow even more. So don't be afraid is what I'm basically saying. Don't be afraid to do that because your tank will love you for it. The plants will thrive. For whatever reason, we don't know why, but plants seem to thrive on being... This is a nice piece of furniture. Expensive, so I don't want to screw it up here by getting it wet and creating water spots on it. So I got to be really careful to pay attention that I am making sure that the water is wiped up here really quickly so that we don't have a situation where we end up ruining the piece of furniture. You know, this is my office area. This is where I spend most of my time. So putting plants and stuff in here, it's important to me for all of this stuff to look really, really good. And I'm going to grab one more from this tank and maybe a few more from another tank and go from there. Now this tank here, if anybody else, you've seen me trim this up several times because over the years, this tank has had the same occupants in here that it's always had. There's always been these cardinal fish in here, and they've done really, really well in here. So I want them to continue to thrive. But you know, they're scared. You know, when you go in there, you're going in there with a pair of scissors and everything else, and they're not used to that. Every once in a while, you know, you go in there and trim them, and you know, if it's not food coming at them, then it's kind of scary for a fish. You know, they're like panicking that you're in there to get them out of the tank or whatever. So anyways, enough of this particular tank. I am going to do a water change on this, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this tank a little bit more and some of the other plants that we're going to be putting in here, which are Anubias Nana, and they're not the petite, but they are the regular size Nana, and those don't go in the soil. They basically are tucked into the rocks, and we're going to get into that in just a minute here. Hey everybody, welcome back. So we are getting into the final stages of this planting for this aquarium, and we did harvest some plants from this tank over here and this tank here. And those are these little repens that are down in here. Those will fill in immensely over a very short period of time. So what we want to do now is get some plants in here that are going to really, really make this thing pop. And what I mean by that is it's going to really, really add some serious color to it. And this is a plant that I use in almost every tank. If you notice, most of my tanks here, some of them you'll see some crypts in here, and you'll see other plants. But this plant here is an Anubias, and there are several varieties of this. I love the Anubias Nana, and that's what this is right here. Now, what you want to do with these is you do not want to put these in soil. Soil is not their friend. They will rot, and the roots will just not do well over time. What you want to do is tuck these down in to rock areas where they will get the support that they need in the tank from those rocks, and they will also thrive in the water because they're not totally submersed. Now, what you want to do is try to tuck these into areas where they're going to look nice. You don't need to super glue these in because, like I said, they will do well just tucked in. And you can super glue them in if you have a spot where you think, you know, I'm not too sure that this is a real good spot for this particular plant to stay in place. Then, you know, go ahead and stick the plant in with a little bit of super glue, and that will really make it come alive and keep them in place. Really keep them in place. There's a lot of plants here for such a small tank, but we want hiding spots for our fish. We want them to have those spots where they can thrive by hiding and feeling secure. That's what fish like to do. They like to have those spots where they can just come alive in hiding. You know, being able to hide and feeling comfortable in the situation that they're in. And that's one of the main things about getting fish going and having them thrive in a tank is making sure that they're in an environment where they are secure, they feel secure, and they're going to do well. Now, this is about all we're going to do with this tank. This tank is pretty much done. The only thing we're going to do now is we're going to add a heater, which we will put right back in this area. It's going to be a very small heater, so there isn't much to it. We have our light already. We will not be probably using that light over time because it's a lot of light for what we are doing in here. These are all low to medium required plants. The stones don't care, the substrate doesn't care, all of that stuff makes no difference, but we do want to make sure that we don't overdo the light where we're going to grow algae and have problems like that. So this light probably won't stay. We will probably find something else that is you know, more suited for this sort of environment. And then the other thing that we're going to have is a filter. Now, the filter for this particular tank is a canister that's a round submersible one, and that will tuck right down in behind here. What I will do is very gently move that rock forward, stick that little pump to the wall back here, and all of our cords will hang off the back, and of course we'll have a backing on there where we won't see any of that. But this really gets this tank to the point where we can start cycling it, and that's really what we wanted to achieve here today, and get this tank really prepared to start that cycle. So I'm going to clean these few things up that I've got laying around here. Then we're going to talk about this tank a little bit more and a final little piece to this three-part series that we did, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Some of the things, the ideas that I have for this tank long term, and I think this is going to be a wonderful tank for some nano fish, for maybe just invertebrates. I'm not sure exactly what I have planned for this yet, but I know that the invertebrates are going to do well in here, and also any nano fish whatsoever that we can find to put in here. We're not going to be able to put a whole lot in here. This is a lot of space being used up by rock. substrate, and so forth. So there is a lot going on in here, but there's plenty of room to put some fish in here that don't need to move around a lot, don't need a lot of space. We're going to research that a little bit, and we're going to figure out the best fish for this particular aquarium, and we'll get those fish. If you have any ideas or comments that you would like to add as far as what I should stock this with, be glad to hear from you as far as what those fish might be, and we'll talk about it and a little bit more. So we're going to wrap it up in a second here and talk about this tank a little bit more before we finish, and we'll get back to that in just a second here. Hey everyone, George here. Welcome back. And so we've been sitting about 24 hours on this tank now. As you can see, the water is a little bit cloudy. That's going to clear up over the next couple of days. Now, as I said a couple of days ago when we started this, there tends to be an oily sheen that comes off dragon stone, and it's kind of a pain to work with. It's a beautiful stone over time. That's why I chose it. But it does have this tendency to leave the water slightly cloudy for a few days, and also a little bit of an oil sheen on the top. This is actually much clearer than it was when I filled it yesterday. And so we've got a little bit of a pump back in this area here. It's a small pump. There isn't much that's required for this. It's actually it's a pump slash filter. It does have actually a 3-stage, believe it or not, system in there of ceramic, sponge, and some charcoal. So this is a real nice little pump here slash filter that is going to work really great for this tank. This little bulb guy, once the lid's on there, that will bend down and close with the tank. It's just a small piece of tubing on there that allows it to breathe a little bit and give it some aeration. So that'll be good. Anyways, we do have a heater in here. The heater is way down in the back. Probably just bumped the camera, sorry about that. The heater is way down in the back there. You can see the cord, but that's going to blend in pretty much once we get a black background on here, which I will be doing over the next few days. Right now, we're just going to have to live with that until I'm able to do that. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to get out and about and get some of the things that you need to sort of put the final touches on this tank. Like I said, 90% of this stuff is stuff that I just had around in my what are you going to do with it room that I just thought, you know, during this time that we're kind of sequestered or locked down in our homes and unable to move around, this would be a nice time to sort of work on this particular project. And I think it turned out really well. I'm real happy with it. I'm real happy with the design. It's a very unusual design for me. It's not something that I've done a lot of. This may be the first one that I've done that I really like. As you can see, all the stones, you know, they're layered upwards from the biggest in the back to the smaller ones in the front, which gives it that sense of dimension, which in scale, which is really important for the look of the tank. And once the water clears in here, I think you're going to be amazed at how pretty this is all going to look. And again, not sure what we're going to put in here, whether we're just going to put some invertebrates in here or maybe some snails, some invertebrates, and possibly a few nano fish. We cannot put much in here because this is a very small tank and it's just not going to allow for that. But that's kind of what the point of this was, is to build something that looked nice and had a little bit of life in it, but over time will just sort of look really nice with the plants and that sort of thing, and a few invertebrates here and there, and possibly some nanofish. I'm not sure about that part of it. We're going to have to see how this goes. There's not a lot of room in here. This is a 5.3 gallon. By the time you get all this rock in here and the substrate and everything in here, you really don't have maybe 4 gallons probably at the most of water, which, you know, nano fish, you can get away with that, and there are some fish out there. If you research it and do your homework, you can get some fish that will work in here. So looking forward to talking to you about that, doing some more videos on this tank here in the future. It's kind of crowded here. Not too sure I'm going to leave it right where it is. May move the tank to another location in my studio office area here. But we'll see over time how this looks. It might just be because the water is a little bit foggy right now, and once that clears up, maybe it's just going to be a matter of getting used to it being there. So anyways, I want to thank everyone for following me on this 3-part series. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you got something out of it, some understanding about design, some understanding about how rocks and plants can work together to give us a really beautiful environment, and you can really pack it in. I mean, this is about as packed in with stone as I've ever had, and I really like it. I really do. Most of my aquariums, as you can see off to this side over here, most of these kind of aquariums are just really kind of jungly looking aquariums, and I like them, don't get me wrong. I really like them, but I wanted to just say that I really wanted to do something different. I hope I did here. I hope I managed to achieve that. I will be adding some autocichlids in here just to try to make sure that we don't get any algae growth at all. The first 3 weeks of this is going to be that crucial stage. The light that's on here, I've decided maybe to keep this light on here. I'm not too sure if that's for sure what I'm going to do, but at this point here, there's a possibility that I might keep this light on here, but also a possibility that I may switch it out for something that's a little bit less intense. And if I do so, the next time we do a video here, you're going to notice some changes on that. But anyways, I want to thank everybody. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell your friends about the channel, and also hit that comments. I really like to have those comments because it gives me a chance to sort of interact with you, as I've said before, to see what you like, see what the future holds for the channel, and see if maybe we can do some things that you guys would like to see happen. And to me, that's the most exciting part. Really watching these tanks be designed, as I said in the earlier part of this video, in part 1 or 2, about the design part of it being the most fun for me, and it truly is, because I really enjoy designing these tanks and watching them all come together and look really cool when they're done. So again, thank you so much for joining me for this 3-part series. This sort of is the end of this series, and we're going to be doing lots more fun things coming up here over the weeks to come. In fact, I've got a big surprise for you that I'm not going to reveal to you, but when I say big surprise, that may mean a big tank, but I'm not going to give anything away at this point here. So anyways, I did want to update you on another tank. I'm going to pick this up and bring it over here. Excuse the jitteriness of this, but I'm going to bring it over here. And this tank here has really taken off and turned into a very beautiful tank. And I've got some more plants in here that finally came in. As I told you, I was waiting on some plants, and we got those in, and the tank just looks really great. Crystal clear, just beautiful. The angels are the only thing in here other than a couple of cichlids that are kind of hiding right now. They're not out and about, and there are a few autos in here, autocichlids as well. There's one of the cichlids down there at the bottom, and if you're facing the screen, on the left of the screen at the very bottom, that's a firetail. I don't know the scientific name of that particular fish, but anyways, it is in the cichlid family, Apistio. is more what it is than a cichlid, but they're all in the same family as well as the angelfish are. But everybody's getting along good in here. This is a great little tank. It's beautiful. I did put a ton more plants in here that came in, and as you can see, it just really made this thing just really pop and made it beautiful. So anyway, George here with the Art of Water. Thank you again, and we will talk again soon. Take care.